Hello. So this is Hussein. I'm beekeeper from Pet Meadows. I think most of you seen this black and yellow honey house here. Yeah, I'm making this place ready for beekeeping and a little bit for beekeeping course to train some beekeeping. Personally, I'm learning too. I'm involved with my research group back home in Iran. I send lots of sample of losses happening from here, especially uh, the one are related with the metabolism diseases like Nosema strana and Nosema apiaries, but also high losses happened to Varroamide last fall. Currently, I have, I believe, around 20% losses until 35% easy to recover. Let's see how that works. So, and also this year I start two new business. One we call city beekeeping. I'm moving over 400 hive to city of basically, I would say from Whistler to Hope, everywhere in the backyard to do a little bit of city beekeeping. And possibly I start to do that in Washington State too. And then also I got the big crew working in Iran, over 4,000 beekeeper. We're trying to work on certain organic beekeeping, basically, possibly that practice with all the epi products uh, comes to North America too. Especially we're working with a hospital and few lab to run clinical study and clinical trial on so many autoimmune diseases on epi products. So all this information will be available, will be released for public, I think in a few months actually. So regarding Caspian Solution, actually also over two lab and 4 or 5 doctors, we're working on certain pathogens. We're trying to use certain some alternative natural products against amoeba or protozoa, which is similar to Nosema apiaries or Nosema strana, or any other pathogen we creating problem for either for larvae or adult bees in North America or also in Iran. So I think bringing that information here, it may help for bee industry. So I see like a place like Vancouver, pretty much most beekeeper, they're receiving above 25, 35% losses every year. And I think that is not per normal losses. It's a little higher than usual we used to see in past like 15 years ago or 20 years ago in this region. Uh, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Hussein.
Yes. Okay. So should I talk a little bit about Caspian Solutions?
Yes, please, sure.
Okay. So basically, the Caspian Solution, it was developed long time ago, like over 30 years ago in Iran. It used to be a liquid form. And then by 2009, I made them in a powder form. Basically is a combination of a queen larva pheromone and then drone larva pheromone and worker larva pheromones. So in a bee colony, we know most of the activities in the colony is related to level of pollen consumptions, how much pollen bees can consume. Based on that, the bees, basically their mandibular gland and hypopharyngeal gland start producing worker jelly and royal jelly. So when here is a key point about the uh, effect of pheromones in the beekeeping. Like every creature, like humans, other animals, we can provide them food and they can eat it. But here is the exception about the bees. In bee colony, you can have a loss of pollen in the frame, and during winter or during summer, if no pheromone from larva, they will not consume the pollen. Basically, everything controlled by nature. When naturally they have access of or so much of pollen flow, automatically nutrition goes up. Basically, bees, young bees gain over 13% weight in their chitins or abdomens. Automatically, jelly production starts, and then they feed the jelly to queens, and then she start laying eggs, increase the level of the pheromones. Worker jelly start increasing, and then brood production start going more and more. So for the natural selection, that was basically very important factors. Because if queen doesn't stop producing eggs, require loss of honey consumption, and they die through starvations. But the problem in the beekeeping is when we control by the nature between the two honey flow, if sometimes we have a rain or a little bit delay for the pollen flow, brood production decrease, and the bees become weaker for the next 20 days or next 30 days for basically to keep getting populated and getting more honey productions or increasing bees or something. So basically, by having a Caspian solution to start with, we use this formula to boosting the hives to make much more brood productions. Eventually, when we figure when we're using the Caspian solution, we're bringing so much brood production. At the same time, we get the larva disease, we get the nosema disease, we get the other diseases comes through with it. So that research actually was way long ago. It goes over 5 years ago when we started royal jelly productions with this pheromone. When we feed the pheromone, we see some hives AFP growing, some hives wax production increasing, some hives brood production increasing. So we figure with the pheromone, somehow we control the behavior of the bee colonies, how we want to basically get to this certain point for brood production, royal jelly productions, or many other works. Eventually, we came to the conclusion we can use the pheromone to push the bees to consume so much pollen. As a result, worker jelly production can help for germinating the spore to bacteria stage when they feed so much of those spore to the larva. To start with, when I was working with my aunt daughter, she was a biotechnologist, also my uncle as a microbiologist. They used to run the PCR or basically antibiogram test to identify the pathogens either are resistant to the conventional antibiotics has been used. Usually at that time was sulfatiazole or oxytetracycline they used to have them for American foulbrood diseases. So when I mentioned to my aunt daughter, say my cousin, how about we use this same formula of using the pheromone to germinate the disease, especially Penibacillus larva, bacteria diseases, AFP, then antibiotics become effective as the same method as lab they're using agar basically to germinate the spore. So she was laughing. She told me, saying, you're smart, but don't go that far because the spore is contaminated, colony is contaminated, the bugs, bees, all over, honey, pollen, it doesn't work. But to make a short story of this, when we start feeding the bees with the pheromone and the pollen and honey in the combinations, then we see the result of AFP treatment and also European EFB disease control, other things. We see we finding remarkable results. Matter of fact, the answer was all over. In some cases, 100%, some cases 50%, some cases 90%. At the same time, we figure the brood production goes huge, combining population become easy. Then we start to work on a methodology and method of applications. So that brought us to basically so many research programs. So I had to have a bee operation, I had to have a research groups to develop better methodology to get to the conclusions of how to use Caspian solutions or the pheromones to guide the bees the way we want it, either for brood production, for wax production, or for queen introduction. I can give you some example. So many works you cannot do without Caspian solution. I give you a few examples. Queen introductions. Almost 98% to 99% success on queen introduction anytime a year, 12 months a year. I can guarantee that for you. So right now I have over 50 distributors in Iran. They're making video, they're sharing all this video to each other. It's a kind of become a revolutionary products for them. Iraq and also in Afghanistan going to be distributed in Turkey too. Second thing is combining population. You can combine population with the Caspian solution. I'm not trying to advertise this. Hopefully you're not taking to that directions. You can try it. It's a guarantee products. You can make the queen to lay eggs in 10 minutes and a minus 20 Celsius. So Naturally, that doesn't happen. Also, wax productions. You can make a wax productions in a time of the year bees does not want to produce any wax actually. Or basically semen productions. Usually over 60% of the drones does not produce semen. But the colony, they're consuming the Caspian solutions. Over 70% of the drones, they produce enough semen. So this is a key point for the people. They want to do artificial inseminations, or also in North California, when they produce lots of virgin queens, usually they don't have enough drones with the semen after month of May. And as a result, when we buy those queen, we get over 40% supersedure in a 5-6 months actually, or at least 30% supersedure, which is unusual. So it depends on how you want to use Caspian solutions. As a different purpose of use, and also is all this methodology, and the result is guaranteed. Lately, actually, I shouldn't say lately, since 2007, when we get a loss of larva disease symptoms with during blueberry pollination, when they spray fungicide, the larva disease more similar to EFP, but when you take the pathogens or larva, basically contaminated larva or infected larva, to the lab, we see a little bit different pathogen than EFB, but also at the same time, we see Streptococcus pyogenes and also Bacillus alveoli and Bacillus cereus, but we see also other pathogens, other larval diseases. When we combine that, the basically antibiotics, Tylazine actually is a registered antibiotics in Canada, with Caspian solutions, you can reduce the dosage of the antibiotics at least 10 times less. And the volume you can use like a coffee cup for 10 frame population, almost next to nothing, to prevent any residue in the honey. Basically, but we get a pretty good result. Also on amoeba and protozoa diseases. So that's why, like me and Jean-Marc, when we use similar methodology, usually we don't lose hive to nosema issue or to EFB or AFB symptoms. Actually, AFB is over right now. Actually, I had over 44,000 hive being treated in North America, but on the EFB symptoms especially. So last few years, we see lots of beekeepers, they have a challenge to keep the bees alive. Like I can name, I don't know is it right to name the beekeepers or not, but some beekeepers from North Alberta, some of them from Central Alberta, some of them from Manitoba. Those beekeepers actually, they used to resist to use these products because it was a little bit of wrong advertisement about the products. They used to misinform the beekeepers. These Caspian solutions contain antibiotics, which has never been contain antibiotics and is never been contain any chemicals. So, and also these pheromones I produce from the larva is irradiated. There's no risk of any chemical contamination or any chance of carrying any pathogen for the bees. So it depends on what's the purpose of use. It can be very useful for treatments and also boosting populations. Like this time of year, when we open the hives, first thing me and Jean-Marc we do is we spray the Caspian solutions with other two additive biological products is added in are called biocontrols. So become all in one. We, by feeding Caspian solution, we prevent diarrhea problem, constipation problem, nosema apis, nosema strana, or any chance of basically risk of getting EFP or AFP symptoms in the colony. So this is what we're starting right now, like this week right now, we're going to go more than 300 hives a day, and to basically, to be sure when colonies start brooding, they don't have a risk of any one of those pathogen or any failure of losing population because of diarrhea or constipation in the colonies. So it's a different purpose of use. Another thing is for increasing population. When we talk, like me and Jean-Marc, we're starting our increase after first week of August. Usually beekeepers, they stop doing beekeeping or stop increasing their hives during June or July. But because we can continue feeding and pushing the queen to lay more eggs from 3, 4, 5 frame population or 2 brood, 2 population from first week of August, we can end up over double box bees or almost over 15 frame population to go through winter. One of the problems personally I'm running with is too many hives in Canada and also USA. I'm trying to do so many work at the same time. I get behind, but I would say nothing wrong with the methodology and also effect of the products I have. So I think this introduction become useful for all of you, but just one more thing I want to add on is I produce lots of byproduct of the honeybees, bee venom, royal jelly, minerals, honey, and also queen cells wax for hospital. I'm sending back home to Iran. And then also N chromosome royal jelly is the main products I produce actually for epitherapy or for human pathogens, especially autoimmune diseases. So these are the general information I would say what I'm doing so far. So if there's any question, maybe it's better specifically on subjectively I answer some question, maybe that becomes much more useful for the beekeepers or for all of you, basically. Hello?
One moment, Zdenka. Hi,
Yeah.
Hussein.
Hi, voice was clear or no? My English is rusty, except my apology on that.
Oh, no, it's excellent. It's excellent. If anybody at this time, I'm just going to already start to collect questions because I will moderate questions afterwards. If everyone has a question, they can just type it in the chat. But it's very clear. Is there anything you wanted to add at this time that you feel that we should know?
Yeah, so basically, like, I think, you know, in a bee industry, as far as we see, we kind of, you know, it's one of those, I don't accept my apology if I'm making this comment. It's one of those weird industry in the bee industry. Usually beekeepers, they don't work together in harmony, and also researchers, same things. It's one of those, I work with many industry actually. I think it's a time for beekeepers, researchers, especially beekeepers. I know researchers, they have their own agenda, they have their own programs. The beekeeper to get together and try to work together. Like about the Caspian Solution, it was in the market since year 2000. I've been, I would say, mistreated on that very badly. And the beekeeper losing advantage of that. Personally, I'm running over 4,000 hives in California, running over 4,000 hives here, running over 5,000 hives in Iran. Also, I have a lots of distributor distributing these products. Besides, I'm making lots of AP products. Is certainly beekeeping is not my main source of income. As many other products I'm producing that, but I feel bad for beekeepers. They're not able to use these products, or they've been misinformed about the products. If you look at just John Mark, I don't think any beekeepers in Canada sell as many as bees as John Mark's, but he's exactly doing what I'm telling him to do, and he's using more Caspian Solution than myself. So I think if beekeepers running bee operation, either 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000, they're suffering for the same problem, either commercially or basically non-commercial numbers, either 1 hive, 1,000 hives. They need queen, they have to have a bee disease control, they need to have a same service. So as far as all these pathogens happening, going on, coming to the bee operation, especially with the larval disease during brood pollinations, pretty much without Caspian Solution, it's hard to keep them alive. And it's pretty difficult. Like, I know varroa mite is a big issue, but many beekeepers, they're losing bees because these amoeba protozoa symptoms and also EFP symptoms. Like, I sent 3,000 hives to beekeeper in North Alberta and Manitoba, for 50-50 share crop, basically. I send my bees to them, but because they had the losses through this amoeba problem and protozoa problem and EFB symptoms, those are my weakest hive this year because their equipment was contaminated. I sent them healthy bees, not all of them, but most of them good populations, but healthy bees. They back sick. So I had to do same treatments as I started doing that work like 2007, 2008, 2009 to prevent, to reduce the level of the protozoa contamination in the colonies. They got contaminated again because they went to the operations. It wasn't managed properly the way John Mark and I would do. So I have lots of mistakes for sure based on my management and the scale I'm running, but I can tell you nothing wrong with the effect of the products and how these products work. And I think it's worth it for a beekeeper to try. It's a guarantee products. It's a guarantee based on a result. And anybody are not happy, they can get paid back for 10-15% of their money they invested on that. So I think it's a time to try these products for beekeepers. And also, I'm going to have much more live video information this year for beekeepers. I'm going to form the basically social media networks called Caspian method, basically based on Caspian method. Actually, I'm publishing 4 books in Iran. It's going to be translated in English language and Spanish language too, but first in English language. It's all about the Caspian method, how we raise queen, how the Caspian solution helps to increase the level of the semens in the drones, queen introduction, AFP disease control, EFP disease control, Nosema apis, Nosema srana. For all this actually, and also all these are scientifically documented and it goes through lab and through professional to be sure. All these report is not based on assumption or observation, is based on a fact. And I try to bring that documentation as much as scientifically is possible, basically. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hussein. This is so informative. Are you okay if I ask a few questions that have come up in the chat?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
All right. So we have from Marion. She would like to know, can you mix the Caspian solution into a bee patty, or will this interfere with the solution?
No, you can use them in patties, but the main thing is depends on which time of year you want to use. There's a different purpose of use for that. As example, like this time of year, I suggest to beekeeper before they use any patties, they have to reduce the protozoa diseases. If they take the sample to the lab, they will see Rasa amoeba protozoa in their bees' rectums or metabolism right now. And I would say they should use them in a liquid form with fumigants, and also have a product called biocontrol to rid of the disease before they use patties. But assuming they've done all this work, they want to use in a patties, the only thing is, like me and Jamard, we use loss of pollen from China after irradiations. We add some honey or acid or any juice to the pollen to be sure does not create constipation, because we have a cold temperature here. If you're using any protein substitute, if it's not pollen, we have a risk of constipations. You can add Caspian solution on it. For sure will be more consumptions. But if it's a cold temperature, you have a risk of constipation, basically, and replace any other protein substitute instead of pollen to replace the pollen, basically. Other than that, just adding Caspian solution in the pollen patties will be more consumption of the pollen. If you don't have constipation issue in the colonies, basically, if bees doesn't have a constipation issue, or if it's no protozoa amoeba issue, it will help. Otherwise, you may face with some difficulty or diagnosing some constipation issue or some problems. Or especially if the colony is suffering from amoeba or protozoa problem, it may increase the level of the diseases.
Okay. And how do you deal with the constipation?
So usually colonies, they have lots of honey stored in the colony. They don't get constipated. The constipation in a colony with more sugar, they are more susceptible to be constipated. But in order to prevent that, just you have to make add some honey in the pollen patties and prevent or try to not use any soya flower, boroi yeast, or anything except pollen. And I'm sure John Mark has some pollen for sale, or you can ask him, or I can make some pollen patties for beekeepers. But John Mark also has that, or I can give you a recipe. You can make your own. Just make sure you don't add so much rose yeast in it. But if the bee or soya flowers, if the bees are constipated, just mix some honey with the warm water, 50-50, with the bees, or you can add some juice, fruit juice, anything, lemon juice, just a pure juice. It will prevent the constipations. It wouldn't be a problem. But don't forget, the bees you have in the colony right now, they are either at least 4 to 6 months old. The first generation has to stay healthy to be sure they can make a one good generation before they die. So otherwise, if you make a mistake when you're starting the beekeeping right now, the bee will be dead. You know, in April, in May, June, July, it's different story. If you damage the hive, the brood can hatch, they can replace the losses. So it's very important to have a proper nutrition when you start. Yeah.
Thank you. Question from Ron is, do you feed this as a spring feeding? And if so, what's the formula or mixture you recommend? You did touch on this a bit, but if you don't mind just repeating that.
Yes, like this time of year we do for disease control, like for 10 frame population, like we use almost half a liters. But then when it comes to spring and summer, it's no limitation. John Mark and I, when we do raw feeding, as much as bees can take it, because it pushed the bees to go brooding so crazy. Like the guy, his name is Brian Koch in California, Fresno, California. Actually, Chichala, like close to Fresno. In 2012, I want to make a short story for this, but I can give his number if anybody wants to talk things. 2012, when I went to his bee operation, it was all contaminated with AFP. He was almond grower. So I saved all these 200 hives, a little above 200 hives, where we used all the contaminated equipment, and he didn't burn anything. And I told him, Brian, is a 5 secret in a beekeeping, 5 main secret. Nutrition, 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 nutrition. So I told him, he said, so basically there's no limit to provide nutrition to the bees. I said there's no limitation. Just add as much as nutrition you can to then create more brood and populations. That doesn't mean we can provide so much nutrition right now. It means after April, when you have almost 10 frame populations, or mid-April, then you can provide as much as nutrition bees can take it. So then you're dealing with so much population you have to deal with. So me and John Mark, we try to use as much as we can. John Mark is capable of using more than me because he has more worker, last number of bees, and then he get better result. Basically, the method of application, I'm going to release that information, depends on what's the purpose of use and how much you want to use. It will be brochure, it will be video documentation for that, will be that information will be released and will be useful for animals. But at this stage, from now till months from now, before you start feeding liquid syrup to the bees, just by drenching is good enough to reduce the diseases. But from April, we fill up the feeders pretty much once a week, and we let the bees access to the syrup with the Caspian, honey, and a little bit pollens, as much as they can take.
Wow, so much information. So Julia just wants to know if you add anything else in the spring from what you've already said, and can you drench with it? So you had mentioned that you could mix the honey or the sugar with water. Could you drench with that, or do you just do the rawing feeding?
Yeah, hello, Julia. So I know she's used the Caspian Solution before, and she's done a great job on that. So, and she's doing a great job in city and also in the beekeeping in Hossien. Basically, when we, at this time of year, just drenching, But then as far as population growing, if population are weak, we put them in a comb beside the population. We don't have to drench because like 1-2 frame populations is a little risky to make them wet. But if it's a 4 or 5 frame population, we drench a little bit on populations. And if you have a small number of hives, it's better to, instead of drenching, to put them in a comb and leave them beside the populations. And what we adding usually, as much as more honey we have in the syrup, is much better. So if you not access to the honey, any lemon juice or something, in order to be sure honey does not contain any pathogens, with the Caspian solution, I'm not very worried about it. But for beekeepers, if they want to be more conservative about it, they can dilute the honey with 5-6 ton volume of the water. For example, for 1 kilograms of honey or 1 liters of the honey, you can add 5 liters water. You can boil them for 2-3 minutes, then should be fine, should be free pathogens. But to make the syrup in a form of acidic liquid forms, then they can defecate. So that would be that's all of it basically. In order to create the brood production, you have to add a little bit pollen to the Caspian solutions and the honey, so then increase the brood production in no time. Basically, after feeding that, after 10-15 minutes, you will see queen start laying eggs basically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question here again from Marion as a follow-up. How are you using to produce byproducts? So like, so when you're doing the spring and you're doing the feeding, do you produce any byproducts with the Caspian solution as well?
Well, the byproduct of honeybees, you mean, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I produce mostly N chromosome rosary. That information will be released in public. I don't know you know this or not. Pretty much, I have over 150 presentation in international beekeeping conferences. But I'm working with over actually 5 hospitals and a cancer patients. And then COVID-19, I was working, the information will be released pretty soon on 500 patients. It was a clinical study. And all these byproducts I produce, pretty much most of the, and also on diabetics and many other subjects I'm working. I used to be board member of American Epitherapy Society for 12 years. Now I formed the Canada Epitherapy Society. And that information will be released with all the research, with all those professional working in hospital and a lab with me. So the byproducts usually are produced. Also, byproduct of the honeybees totally depends on pollen consumption. A place like Alberta, for example, in a certain point of the time in July, part of August, colonies highly populated, is not difficult to produce those byproducts. But the rest of the months, like April, May, June, and then back to August and September, is pretty difficult without Caspian solutions. By Caspian solution, basically, you can control the hives, what to do for you, basically. So to produce jelly or worker jelly or wax production or anything, you name it. So the products I produce, byproducts, I produce queen cell wax. We're using for bed ulcer, we're using for herpes, we're using for cosmetic line, or also medicinal property on that. That information will be released with the study has been done. And a bee venom I produce commercially, and I'm going to bring the form of the device we develop in Iran. It works with remote controls, so you don't have to go close to the eyes when you placing the bee venom device. I used to get that from Michael Chemics, but this is way more advanced bee venom collectors. And then royal reproduction, and then the propolis also. But Canadian propolis is hard to mix them or dissolve them in alcohol to compare to what we get in Iran and Brazil. I'm trying to avoid collecting propolis from here. But the mineral honey is another one. The mineral honey usually we produce iron, calcium, magnesium honey. So the reason we pick these 3 minerals, because we talking about over 95% of the female running on iron deficiencies, and we run certain lab tests and also clinical study to increase the level of the ferritin in the bloods or iron in the bloods, with the females especially running their mineral deficiencies. So these are the few basically byproduct of the honeybees I'm working with. And I'm going to publish 3 books actually in Iran. The first one of them will be available in Iran and going to be in a month, and also going to be translated in English. Is about the basic introduction of the byproduct of honeybees, and second one would be the production and application, and third one would be clinical study and clinical trial, and a case study has been done through all this, and over 40, 50 beekeepers applying these products for patients basically. So also I may open the beekeeping course for byproduct of honeybees this year for Vancouver, for people that like to learn actually.
Perfect. I'm just going to move on to another question. Marion has another follow-up question, but I'm going to just keep them in order. Have you found that your bees are set back after blueberry pollination in the monoculture blueberry fields? And if so, what has been your strategy for helping them recover after blueberry pollination? Would you recommend farms to plant a variety of food sources, or is pollination more effective if there's no competing plants?
Well, it's a good question you're asking about this, because lots of beekeepers are suffering for that. And I don't know, I think maybe it's not right to mention the name of the commercial beekeepers. They've been losing 50, 70% of their operations, either from Manitoba or North Alberta. So we know right after spraying fungicide during blueberry pollinations, colony crash. So that symptoms of like EFP symptoms is not only affecting the larva, also affecting the bees, cannot take the syrup, cannot take the pollen patties, and the population decline very bad. So what I did since 2007 actually, and we improving the products I have, is a combination of Caspian Solution with the protozoa killer and the biocontrol, basically all natural components. In combination with very low dosage of thylacine and antibiotics, a very low dosage. When I say low dosage, it means for double box bees, we use the size of coffee cup liquid. Me and Jean-Marc, we do that. And usually when we spray that, we want to be sure we're not feeding the bees, or there's no honey flow, or coming to cloudy day or rainy day or something, to be sure does not create any residue in the honey. And so far, we've been able to save the bees. And I know a few commercial beekeepers, they resist to use it, and then they see when they're losing their operation, they had no options. But no matter how much we are careful with that and we're trying to do prevention job, still we get some symptoms, but not to the point to to reduce the population in the colonies, or having the over 1% of the symptoms of the larva disease in operation. So me and Jean-Marc, we have pretty much good control on that. So that's going to be part of my Caspian method beekeepings. And I would say planting so many other flora, like planting whatever flowers you want to have them around the farm, still it will not prevent 100%, because there's a two part of it. It's the pathogens and the nutrition. So nutrition, providing high level of nutrition, a variety of the pollen, it can help to boost the immunity, but it's not a solution. Because when you have access of so much of the bacteria become epidemics in the colonies, you have to have a methodology to destroy the pathogens. It just, that some of those pathogen stays in the colony for so many years. I send a sample to Iran. Some of those amoeba protozoa is unknown in the industries, is surviving 5-6 years. Some of those bacteria for over 2 years. And somehow we can't avoid using antibiotics. We have, this year, actually, I got 3 labs, 6 people just working on 2 subjects. The EFP symptoms we have, and the protozoa amoeba we have is not related to amoeba, is not related to Nosema apis and Serrana. They're creating similar symptoms. And we rent an island in Iran, there's no bees. we're trying to do all these tests, and then lots of my team crew telling me why I'm putting all this effort on this instead of on someone human pathogen or anything. To make a shorter story of this, to plant all these flora, it may help, but it's not enough. It just you may can reduce the risk a little bit, but it's not enough for sure. You have to have a policy and a plan to use certain antibiotics with the supplement we have. And I would say if beekeepers like to do naturally, at least try these products I have for 5 or 10% of contaminated hive and to compare them with the other methodology you use or other conventional method you like to do, and then you share the result with other beekeepers. And I'm sure they will be satisfied, you know.
Begin our own little testing to figure out what works.
Yeah.
I have a question here from Sandra. She uses Caspian Solution and has great brood production, but she finds that the bees, while she's using it, are much more aggressive. She's heard from other beekeepers that this also happens. How does one avoid them from becoming more aggressive? Is that possible?
You know, here is the thing though. When you have so much brood productions, always in the colony, you have a wax production to draw comb, draw wax, capping brood, and also creating 32 to 38 Celsius temperatures. When you're opening the hives, you're disturbing the bees from their activities. And anytime bees are producing wax, when you open the hives, some of those aggression behaviors rise up. So, and then beside that, you can have an opposite result. When you open the hives, drench the Caspian solution on it. It makes the bees so quiet, way more than a smoker is. And then I think that's the methodology I would suggest. When you open the hives, drench the Caspian solutions, they produce Nasona pheromones. So alarm pheromones makes the bees to attack. Sorry, I got the phone call I rejected. So alarm pheromones, it makes the bees to attack more, and the Nasona pheromone is the opposite pheromones. So Caspian Solution has that pheromones beside the larval pheromones. That's why when I collect bee venom, when I collect bee venom at the same time with drenching, there's not enough pheromone to be sure bees become quiet and gentle. But generally it's normal. This is true. When you feed Caspian Solutions, because of more brood production, more wax production, sometimes we see the aggression behavior. Yeah, they attack a little bit more.
Do you recommend like in just a spray bottle and spray it on, or more like a drizzle?
More drizzle, more drench is better.
Okay. And if we were to mix, so here's a follow-up question from Marion. If we mix the Caspian Solution, what ratio would you put it when you were, let's say, using one of these controls for the bees, like Fumagillin B?
You know, I'm sure the only thing I have fear, if I give different recipe, then we work on based on a metric and a gallon. We provide it for the, basically for the brochure, but I can give you just a roughly estimations. We use 1 bottle of 1 pound fumagillins, like 450 grams. We're using 600 liters, and 1 thylacine for 1,000 liters. And then level of the Caspian solution, if you increasing the, basically if you're using 350 grams in 120 liters or 40 gallons, if you increase the level of the Caspian, you'll see more brood production. You have to increase the level of the honey and level of the pollen based on level of the, especially level of the pollen has to be increased based on level of Caspian you're increasing. So generally speaking, the way John Mark and I we use 1 bottle of 350 grams for 120 liters of syrup, and then we use like a minimum 2% honey or 1% honey, 2% lemon juice or any fruit juice, and then we use pollen minimum 1 to 3%, and then fumagillin, 1 fumagillin is coming for between minimum 500 to 600 liters of the syrup. So, and then when we have the 1 thylacine bottle of thylacine for 1,000 liters, we use only drenching for prevention. That is for disease control. We use like a size of coffee cup for, or 1 liters for 5, 6 hives of 10 frame populations. So it's not much and will be consumed immediately. But if you use these products after the first 2 feeding, we recommend strongly to use with antibiotics and fumigants, like become 2 coffee cup for 10 frame population in a period of 5 to 7 days. So we use it once a day, once in 5 to 7, 8 days. And then when that is over, then you don't need antibiotics for 1 month. So then we feed the bees, we fill up the feeders. Well, when we say fill up the feeders, not this time of year, after end of March, basically, we fill up the bees feeders with no antibiotics. And we do not recommend the beekeepers when they use the products with antibiotics, they should not use Caspian solution without antibiotics in 2-3 liters of basically high volume, at least for 4 or 5 days, to prevent risk of any chemical residue in the honey.
Perfect. Thank you. There's so much information. It's amazing. Are you able to share with us what some of the ingredients in the Caspian solution are? Like, we know that you had mentioned a few, but do you mind just going over it? We had a couple of individuals join late.
Yeah, it's no problem. I've been there for a long time. So it's a queen larva pheromones, and I'm producing directly from queen larva. And then drone larva pheromone, which is producing directly from drone larva, and the worker larva pheromone, which is collecting directly from just an ordinary larva. And then the main secret is how to make, first of all, to extract the pheromones out of it, and then how to make them dissolvable in the water, and then also how to make a sustainable release. These are the 3 key points to produce Caspian solution, and also how to integrate with the methodology for different purpose, And I wasn't worried how these products want to get copied, and because it's so sophisticated, basically. And then, and also economically, it doesn't make sense for somebody, assuming if they have the information for that. And then, yeah, that's the main ingredients. The rest is honey, pollen. I think is simple to figure out where the source of the pollen and honey, actually. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. You spoke about it affecting bee behavior by changing the pheromones levels. How is this achieved?
So basically, this is basically how the bees behave. When they collect the pollen, they come to the colony, they dance to the geographic location of the pollens. When they attack to humans or animals or any other foreign attackers, they release alarm pheromone. At the same time, when they receive the food, especially pheromones with the nutritions, it looks like you're telling somebody you have 50 people coming for dinner tonight, you have to cook food for 50 people, and really 50 people is not there. You're making access of food for 50 people. So when you drenching pheromones, Nasona pheromone with the larval pheromones, with the protein, basically you're messaging to the bees, you have so much larva to feed, you have to consume lots of proteins. Because when they receive the protein, liquid proteins with honey, they're releasing that pheromones for other bees. Automatically that behavior changes. This year, actually, I will share the video during venom collections. Bees are so aggressive, they want to attack any creature like a 50 yard around the bees. And then as soon as you drench them right away, they become quiet. So usually we see that natural behavior with the bees when they collect lots of pollen in spring. They are much more gentle than in August, for example, or in fall. So protein consumption makes the bees so gentle. But this trick is a little bit with the nasonal pheromones. Is a pheromones with a liquid protein and makes it like that. So it's a natural behavior of the bees when they receive that. That's how they react, And I will make that video available, release that video when I'm going to describe the Caspian method, when I'm going to check the bees by feeding these liquid Caspians. Actually, Jean-Marc and I usually we do that when we open the hives, or before we use the smokers, or if you use a little bit of smoker, we drench Caspian. Then the populations, they sound like they're sitting on a brood or trying to process the honey they stay calm and gentle and all.
Awesome. We have a question about, you had mentioned some classes. Are you going to have, when classes are available, posted on your website?
Well, actually, because I'm doing so many things once, like 5, 6 big projects, but I'm going to somehow I have to be able to advertise through social media to see how can I inform the beekeepers for that, maybe through bee association. If you have a recommendation, let me know how should I do it. But I think that class will be, I should start that, I think, in a month from now. So if it's necessary, maybe I could do it sooner, just for beginners or the peoples. They want to know how to manage the hives for spring management right now. But I think that will be I try to do this through social media, Instagram and Facebook. That's what we're aiming right now. But if you have any recommendation, I'm more than happy to hear that,
Thank you. That's wonderful. I'm sure we have lots of recommendations. Sharing it with clubs is one great way to get the word out there already. People just heard you were coming here this evening, and
Thank you.
John and a few other members that are here today have shared that they absolutely love using Caspian Solution. I didn't read those as I was going through, but it was definitely shared.
Yeah, thank you.
At this time, does anybody have any last minute questions before we finish up with Hussein's official point of the talk?
Have you closed your website now?
I just posted the website from Hussein in the chat. Thanks to Dan, he found that for us. It did change. So the website address changed. It's in the, I just put it at the bottom of the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'm not good at social networks, but I'm going to hire the assistant to work on that. I'm good at that back home in Iran. I have a big crew, they're working on it. But here in Canada, slowly I'm going to develop the team to be sure we can be responded properly to the media before we advertise it. But I'm going to do that for sure.
Thank you so much, Hussein, for joining us this evening and sharing your thoughts and wisdom and answering our questions. Is there like a top 5 list of things that you think are the most important for spring management? Leave us with like your top 5 things for spring management.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me and having the opportunity to chat with beekeepers and you. So basically, the 5 main things I would say when you be opening the hive right now, it's very important to have this Caspian method we're talking for the disease control right now, because these old bees passing the winter, it's very important to be sure before they become active and they die, they are healthy and they are capable of producing first generation for us to be sure hive can sustain, to be sure we can sustain the operations or health of the colony. Secondly, same disease control with the Caspian method after blueberry pollinations, disease epidemics. And then third items I would say is a guarantee products for beekeepers that have no risk of losing money. I think it is following the Caspian method, because that's include everything, queen productions, everything. And I would say other thing is mite control is very crucial. The varroa mite becoming big issue because become resistant to so many so many chemicals. Natural products are not, like oxalic acid, thymol, or other ones are not, or formic acid can't have as good effect as chemical used to be. Now most of the chemicals are not working properly, either amitraz or alpiston or pheromones or any others we used to have. So that's requeening. And then another one is the queen problems. So most of the queen we receive from overseas, they're not good, especially Australia and New Zealand. queen, automatically we get over 40-50% losses in a 5-6 months. So it's important to raise your own queen or having a better queens or local queens, at least for level of the semen they collect in their spermatheca, and a healthy semen, they not get overheated to transport or something. These are the few main issue we have to deal with. Either generally, if you make them a little bit more professionally documenting that, I would say disease control has to be in place, nutrition has to be in place for increasing populations, and also the method of the beekeeping we're going to do. I think practice from the beekeepers doing a good job. I'm not a good manager on a beekeeping. John Mark is better than me. But I would say the amount of knowledge I have on a bee industry, I think, can be helpful for different subject of the beekeeping. And I would say it's a time for us to become much more knowledgeable about byproduct of the honeybees and informing the media about the benefit of the bee products. Currently, we have lots of Chinese products in the market on byproduct of the honeybees. So I think all of us, we are responsible to inform the media about Canadian honey and also Canadian bee products we can provide to the consumers, actually. Hopefully this presentation become helpful for all of you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We have about 13 more minutes left of our Bee Club meeting. Do you mind just hanging out for sort of like casual conversation with the members that are here tonight?
Yes, no problem. I'm more than happy. Just I want to be sure I'm not taking much of your time. That's all.
Oh, we are very thankful you're here with us. So this ends the formal part of the presentation. And if you want to hang around and chat with Hussein for the next few minutes, we have our meeting officially ends at 9 o'clock. So feel free to just take yourselves off mute and have an open discussion. Thanks, Hussein.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone want to go ahead, anyone?
Yeah, thank you.
Just curious, besides West Coast Bee Supply, where else can people buy Caspian Solution?
It used to be Lindsay, and then also I have available on my honey shop too. The reason I didn't advertise much because at that time I was living in Delta. I sold my house in Delta. I moved to Meadows. I'm trying to make a honey house, big honey house for meadery and cosmetic line and many other byproduct of honeybees in my land, my farm here. But I'm available here. I have a Caspian Solution available from next 4 or 5 days. So if anybody needed, with the label would be available next 4 or 5 days. Other than that, if without label, just available any.
Perfect.
No problem.
Hey, Hussein, may I ask a
Yes.
question? It's Julia.
Sure,
nice to see you, Hussein.
Hey, Julia, nice seeing you. Yeah.
Yeah, nice to see you too. I've not put the Caspian into the cells in a frame, so I guess just pour it in. I've done that with sugar syrup before, but not with the Caspian. So that's a nice way then, and then put it right beside the cluster so they can get at it easily. So you just pour it in, tip your frame and drench it.
Yeah, you can do that. You know, in the commercial beekeeping, we don't have a time for that.
Yeah.
But in weaker hives, or if you have a time, you can put them in a comb. Even sometimes before you go to bee yard, at your place, your home, or any or barn, or anywhere you have a comb, you can pick 100 frames. If you have 100 hives, for example, get the 100 frames and put them inside the comb. When you checking the hive, take one comb out, and replace it with the comb beside the population. You can do that, or immediately when you take the frames out, you can pour it in and put them beside the populations. It's time consuming, but it's worth it.
Yeah, I've done it at home before with a spray, with like a garden sprayer pump.
Right.
But I hadn't thought to do that with a weak colony. I hadn't thought about the fact that it's harder for them to take a drench. So that's
Right.
a nice little tip, a finessing tip on making
Yeah,
it
no problem.
easier for a weaker group.
Yeah,
So
no,
thank you for that.
yeah, thank you, Julia. Thank you. No problem.
Do you know what the effects of Caspian Solution are on other bee populations? Just because we have a few beekeepers here who don't necessarily keep honeybees.
Well, it was actually some research has been done on mason bees and wasps and hornets and other things. We have some result, but I don't want to talk much based on my assumption. You know what I mean? But I can tell you one work has been done was great on maggot therapy. And I don't know know about the maggot. They use the larva to manage the wound management and diabetics. So usually the flies, basically the 29 countries they're working on it. Ronald Sherman in USA, he's a founder of that since 1986. That's his practice over 200 years, but in 1986 he started again. And in also in Iran, we've been practicing that. When I know the male flies, usually when females get mated, the flies getting mated with that, is the over 30% of the eggs are not become fertilized. But we used to feed N chromosome rosary or a little bit Caspian solution to the sugars, adding to the sugars. Pretty much we had almost 100% of the larva eggs become fertilized. So that also we had similar result on a wasp, but also at the same time we can use them to destroy the wasp, which is, I don't like to do that, to be honest. And we practice that. We destroy lots of wasp colonies around the bee operations. And we got that practice going with the poison actually because lots of some beekeepers, they have that problem. Personally, I have a hard time killing insect, to be honest with you. It doesn't matter is wasp or hornets or whatever it is, and I believe they are good for the nature. Anyway, they have to be there. But increasing brood production on wasp, we had a significant result. Just as was a practice for us to see how that works. On the bumblebees, actually, I was talking to some greenhouse actually, and we didn't get to the conclusion of run proper practice yet, but I'm more than happy and open to the idea to run the practice to have some evidence to see either it's working or not. And I'm sure as far as we know, the bumblebees are not responsible to their nest. Usually they run away. And I would say mostly I don't know, just assumption. This is my assumption. Maybe the protein deficiency is because of that. So maybe works. If somebody are willing to work with, I'm more than happy to provide free products and free discussions to learn more about this, and to then possibly become some tools to increase much more bumblebees or mason bees or other things.
That's fantastic. Thanks for the offer. We do have a few mason beekeepers here tonight, so that goes out to them.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I have free products to practice, I'm sure it doesn't damage the mason bees or bumblebees, but if it works, it can be helpful to the industry.
For sure. Anybody else want to have some questions?
Hossien, did you say that you can get the Caspian solution at your honey house on Lougheed?
Yes, right now it's not labeled, but if you don't mind to get them with no labels, you can have them now. But if you want it with the labels, it would be at least next 3 days, obviously, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And also one more purpose of use for Caspian solutions. You can use the pheromones. I have pure pheromones from Caspian Solution. I dilute them with the wax, and then we coat them on a foundation. And then the bees are reforming the wax. It looks like you're giving the wax to the bees to reform on the foundations. They don't have to produce wax. Like me and John Mark in 2015, 16, and 17, I used pretty much 100,000 foundation per year, and over 90% of them was drawn by bees. Basically, it was reformed. They don't have to produce wax. And then we have some pictures, like 5-10% of the foundation are not coated with the pheromone. Bees doesn't want to draw any wax on that 5-10%. But then the rest of the place just they're being reformed in a short time. And that can help also to find the queen, because that pheromone are not matching with the pheromone is existing in the colony, and makes the queen as a competitive for them, as a competitive pheromone in the colony. She wants to lay eggs and dominate the pheromone pretty much on that frames. We can find the queen in a double box bees 48 hours to 4 or 5 days or 3 days after we're adding that frame in the second box. So a little bit helps for finding queen and requeening programs, actually, because in a strong population it's difficult to find the queen.
You're singing our song right here. So many of us were like, I can't find the queen. She's not marked. That's
Yeah,
a great.
that makes it easy. Besides, it makes it easy for bees to draw wax. So they don't have to produce it. You give the wax on a foundation with the pheromone. They reform the wax because of that wax contains so much pheromones.
Great.
Sometimes it happens actually 15 frame a day sometimes. The beekeepers, his name is Michael Tremkio. He's from Vegreville, North Alberta, North Edmonton, northeast of Edmonton. I think it was 6 years ago or five years ago, I believe, 5 years ago. He put 2 foundation coated with the wax in a second box, 2 of them on a third one, 2 of them on a fourth box. Bees was escaping the second box to the third box, fourth box, just drying the comb as that pheromones. And then he figures bees escaping the boxes to draw that. So he took all the foundations and then he coated on every foundation. So, and the cost is pretty cheap, like 10-15 cents per frames, and pretty much it's not really a cost, and wax maybe cost a little bit way more than that pheromones just to coating on that,
Are you drenching that, or are you just sprinkling the capsin on the wax, or?
No, what we do actually, we melt the wax with the water, and then we dilute that pheromone with the water into the wax. Then when we moving the frames, pushing the frames to the liquid wax, and we take them out and we shake them, it will be layer of the wax on a foundation with the pheromones.
This is really mind-boggling information. Like, this is my first time joining this Bee Club meeting. Thank you very much for having me. The work that you've been doing is amazing and probably groundbreaking. Are you doing this privately as a citizen, or are you working with conjunction in a university? Are there papers?
No.
Experiments you've been doing?
I'm doing myself. I have a big researchers groups in Iran. I do a little my way, and that's why many time research groups either Canada, USA, or in most places they've been offended by my presentation and they don't like it. So, and then to be honest with you, I try to be humble as possible, friendly and cooperative as possible. And I try, and because they're not familiar with the terminology of the language and the biology I work with, I don't know, somehow they become offended. I try to be careful. I give you just example. Over 43,000 hive with contaminated with AFP, American Foulbrood diseases. It was treated in Canada and USA. And that cannot be a assumption or coincidence. And it was a mini report was released in Canada or verbally being released, like a snake oil or some things. And when I started this business in Iran, with the experience I got in North America, I tried with 100% guarantee products, 10% interest for refunding the money people using it. And I'm going to use same methodology here. And also in US, I'm going to say, okay, somebody using these products and they are not satisfied, they can get their money back with 10% interest. And but you know, down the road, it's just a benefit for you. You know, if you want to introduce queen, you're losing queen 50%, 30%, 40%. What's wrong? You're using some products to reduce the losses to 2%, or you're combining populations, or you have an EFP symptoms after blueberry pollinations, or beside that, like I want to give you a few names, like Honeybee Center, and also Paradise Family in Alberta. They've been resisting using these products after blueberry pollinations. Eventually, they had no choice. They had to use it. They had to use it because the reason they've been resisting, because there was so much misinformation or wrong information through Medad Nasser and a few others trying to say these products, it may contain antibiotics. And to me, one thing was unfair. First of all, if you want to take someone's property, you should do it properly. You know, you should know that you cannot destroy some business just by assumptions of maybe contain some things. You know, and that was totally unfair. And I see that's happening so much in industry. I try to move from the industry a little bit, being privately working on lots of things. Like N chromosome rheology as example, it's a revolutionary product. The N chromosome rheology, it was basically we've been working with over 1,350 patients with H. pylori, a stomach ulcer, which is that bacteria is resistant to antibiotics, and over 70% of worldwide population are suffering for that, and only 10% of the patient they're having the symptoms with they have a stomach pain or acid reflux. They go to doctors running the endoscopy test, and these N chromosome usually 1 week of application, it can cure that. So I know it's difficult to use the words cure. It's just a friendly conversation. I'm mentioning this, and also 95 patients on under 14 years old patients with cancer patients in hospital. It was a clinical trial. It was published as a report in Epimondia 2019. Usually after chemotherapy, the white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets comes low, and body cannot defend, and they can die through normal pathogens. So it's increased the white blood cells in less than a month. So that's the study has been done. It was a clinical study, clinical trial in the hospital. And then I try to be much more flexible with the scientists and integrating the Western medicine scientific works on the chemical side with the natural products with no fundamental movement. As you know, these groups are pretty much like enemies. They like religious people. They're fanatics about their own way or their own avenue they're taking. So we creating the scientific organizations to work on all these products, to learn about the mechanism and also method of application for all these products. I think that information will be valuable for the bee industry to run the practice and work with. But regarding North America, is I would say mostly was tough to work with organizations. And maybe part of it was barrier of language. I couldn't speak proper language, or but I try to be as friendly and flexible as possible to work with industries. But so far, it didn't work that well.
Hussein, have you experienced any negative effects from the Caspian solution?
Oh yes, one main negative is, thank you for reminding me for that. If you feeding Caspian solutions and you're not providing protein for the bees, it has a very bad effect on bees. I'll give you just example. Assuming you are in mid-August and you have 200 hives in one location, or commercial beekeeper close to you and near you, and average population you have, assuming is 10 frames. This is just a roughly number, right? So when you feeding Caspian solution, goes huge eggs productions. So with the eggs production, that eggs need lots of pollens. If you cannot provide pollen paddies or natural pollen flow, what happens, they have to use their fat deposit, whether they're cuttings or abdomens, basically. When they use the fat deposit, and they not access to the natural pollen or pollen paddies, what happens, they lose weight, but also they have to throw out lots of larvae and eggs, because eggs production doesn't mean larva stage and pupa stage. And then they get to protein deficiency or malnutrition. So as a result, they don't have the longevity to survive the winter. So that's why when you providing the Caspian solution to the bees, you have to be sure you can provide the proteins for the bees. That's the main, but it's a good problem to have lots of brood productions, but larvae need the pollen. So